Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Marcia Braden. I'm a licensed psychologist in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I'm also a member of the Scientific and Clinical Advisory Committee to the Fragile X Foundation. I'm here today to talk about females with Fragile X and ways to help deal with COVID-19. What I know about females with Fragile X is that they work very hard to overcome their deficits. So I also know with this virus and all the restrictions, fears, and associated worries, they're going to come out ahead. They persevere, and no matter how high the mountain, they continue to climb with determination. And when they become discouraged, they rewind and move forward. Through my many years and experience with individuals with Fragile X and females especially, I've learned that they inspire me because they continue to laugh and enjoy life even when they struggle. They are my heroes. If we're talking about selecting appropriate coping skills and strategies, we really need to pay attention to the functioning level of the female. So younger or more impacted females respond better to being reassured through social stories, looking through picture albums, and kind of talking about those people that they're not able to see in person right now while they're on social isolation. They probably are missing them very much, but they're unable to communicate that with you. So just looking through an album and discussing those fun trips that you took together and the people that they were with, and even some school pictures would be helpful to kind of reassure them through this process. Others may need more predictability of scheduling and providing alternative structure to their days when they're not at school, in day programs, or at work. And again, this is all part of sort of calming them and helping them feel reassured in a structured environment. While I talk about coping, we really need to look at some of the other things that are going on with individuals with Fragile X, especially the younger girls. And more is not more, less is more during this crisis, because the more that you involve them in conversations and the more that you expose them to news broadcasts and talk about the virus, the worse it's going to get for them. Talking about that virus and how it hurts many and kills many, and watching the news really can become very difficult for them because they may in fact perseverate on that information. And so instead of talking to you about that, they may in fact get into a situation where they're worried about these things that they've heard or overheard or even heard on the news, and yet they're unable to bring that up to you. Missing school, trying to keep up with distance learning is also very difficult. And some of the girls would be on IEPs or 504s, and you would want to make sure that all of those accommodations are set up for your girls. So be sure to look at their work, look at their schedule, put it all together for them, and offer them frequent breaks so that they may be able to have some modifications to the daily skills that others are taking part in. I think families sometimes have gotten real creative here while they're coping with this virus and being socially isolated. And I've heard from a lot of you that you've been doing journaling and video journaling, which I think is a great idea, where you really kind of look at your cell phone and go through the day with your smartphone, recording some things that are happening, and then at the end of the day, looking at those again and sort of going over the projects or the things that you've accomplished through the day. The girls really enjoy that, and they also like taking their own pictures and taking their own videos. Some of the girls are drawing pictures of their days of the family in isolation, and also some of them are journaling their time at home. It's also been really helpful to have checklists so that checking off completed chores or jobs or activities kind of gives them evidence of things that they've accomplished. And I think we're all feeling like that. There's nothing worse than looking at the beginning and the end of the day and saying, you know what, I didn't accomplish anything today. I was just sort of a slug. I think if we get into that habit too much of the time, and the girls especially do that as well, they're going to feel unsettled and they're going to feel as if they haven't accomplished anything. There's several things that we should talk about that maybe are going to help identify some of the problems when we're dealing with coping with girls. Several clinical findings that we should be aware of are the behavioral characteristics that are well documented in the literature, as well as the psychiatric conditions. And again, I've just taken a snapshot of some of those that I think that are particularly important for us to discuss today as we go through figuring out some coping strategies and mechanisms for the girls. We know that they're very shy. That's a behavioral characteristic. But then on the other hand, some of them are superficially extroverted. And really what I mean by this is even in one family, we may have a girl who's very shy and her sister, in fact, may be very extroverted, but both of them are really trying to deal with their anxiety. And so one becomes very shy and sort of is not comfortable in social settings, and others sort of are superficial about their love for people and being engaged with people. The poor impulse control is really difficult because when we're trying to teach some of the strategies, oftentimes the girls seem to not be listening, or they're not interested. And so we have to really get their attention and help them get through some of these strategies. The personal boundaries can be a problem as well. And then something I think that's really critical here in terms of understanding what they're understanding about the virus and what's being communicated to them is that nonverbal learning disability, which means they really don't often understand nonverbal language, body language. They actually misperceive and miscue sometimes related to that nonverbal language. And so we want to be really careful in helping them understand that. And I think probably the biggest issue in any of the girls that I've dealt with, and even when we've done groups of females, we've noticed that they rank conflict as one of the most aversive things that they can experience. And so they're going to avoid that conflict at any way. And I think that's really important for us to know and to be careful about, because they may have seen or felt conflict in the family, and it may have been about wearing a mask or going out and being careful in public, and poor people at the supermarket, and those kinds of things that maybe would to them seem conflictual. We have to really be careful because they're going to avoid that, they're going to bury it, and they're not going to talk about it. We know that also that there are psychiatric conditions that are comorbid with this syndrome. Depression. And I've seen a lot of girls lately that are fairly depressed because of this virus and because of their worries and fears. They're also depressed because their scheduling has changed so dramatically. They also have the anxiety, as we talked about, in terms of the shyness and the social phobias. And so what can happen is that they can sort of go underground, and they can kind of withdraw, and they don't want to get out at all. They don't even want to go out in their backyard. They don't want to be outside. They get pretty obsessive about things that they've heard. They kind of get stuck on some of the information that comes across the airways. Some of them have mood disorders and seem to be highly dysregulated when things get very anxious for them. And this is definitely an anxious time in all of our lives. And then some of them have this dependent personality where they're really checking in all the time and wanting people to help them get through some of their fears. We really need to pay attention to that for sure. So anxiety and shyness, it gets in the way of them dealing with this virus, with this crisis. So it's not unusual that we see the young girls kind of hiding behind a parent. Boys do this as well. They may even cry when they're spoken to because they're not sure what they're supposed to say back. They're not sure how to respond, and they often are unable to separate from a parent. Some of them even whisper when they answer a question. And the reason that this is important to consider at this point in time is that that doesn't go away just because they're older. And actually, some of them sort of backslide and become even more shy or even more quiet in this situation where they're really very frightened and afraid. And so we need to remember that even though that's the way they were when they were younger, they may be actually feeling those sorts of things right now, even if they're older. As they grow older, their shyness kind of manifests in this social anxiety, and we see this often in the girls. it really causes them some problems. And we see this happening right now in the family. We see them not wanting to talk to family, relatives and people on the phone, and maybe they kind of worry about what they might say, or if they're checking in on family members. And what happens socially in this situation when they can be out and with other people is that they sort of feel ill because they've committed to something that they really know is a social experience that they're terrified to participate in. And so again, that becomes a big issue for them to deal with. It's common for the girls to agree to a plan, and they may even agree to something with the family. They may agree to taking a walk, or they may agree to taking a ride or something, and then feel very anxious. I had a girl the other day that was afraid to go outside because she was sure that she would catch the virus if she went outside, even if she was wearing a mask. And it took us a long time to drill down and to get to the bottom line of this, because we couldn't understand why she was not going outside. And instead of saying, I don't want to go, or I'm afraid to go, I'm afraid I'm going to catch something, she would make up all kinds of excuses not to go outside. And again, that just tells you how hard it is for them to express themselves, even in their family at times. Sometimes they resist saying no for fear that they're going to hurt somebody, or that the rejection is going to hurt somebody. And so that's going to then create more conflict. And in the case of the young girl that I'm talking about, who wasn't able to tell her parents that she didn't want to go outside, and instead said that she had a stomach ache, or instead said that she needed to nap, that she was very tired. Those are the times where they don't want conflict. They don't want to say, I don't want to go outside, because they're afraid that there's going to be a conflict to follow. So here's some strategies to kind of help with this issue, and maybe this can be helpful to some of you who are dealing with this right now. So instead of saying no to someone, it's better to maybe teach some text, something that they can say instead of the no. So maybe it will be something like a phrase, a canned phrase that you might teach them, like, I'll have to check my schedule if somebody's asking them to do something, or I need to see if my family has plans, or I think I may have a conflict. This sort of takes the harshness out of saying no, and it also gives that individual, that girl with Fragile X, an opportunity to have more time to think something through. And as she begins to utilize these strategies and say sort of these canned phrases to people instead of no, she's going to gain confidence, because her feedback from them is not going to be negative. It's not going to be, well, why'd you say no, or why can't you go? It's going to give them a reason for her not saying yes at that moment, because she is basically saying, I have to check my schedule. Okay, there's a reason why maybe I can't go. Or I think my family may have plans. There's a reason that she's saying that she needs more time to think about it. So again, it really is very helpful to teach them sort of these canned phrases. They have fear of conflict, and we know that many of the females don't express those worries in words. So they kind of hide behind their shyness. They might start to cry. They may withdraw. They may become irritable. And I've spoken to a number of female adults right now who are still living at home with their parents, that are sharing with me things that they've done with just crying and feeling really sad about things, and just going to their room and crying and not being able to talk about it with anyone. Parents report that their daughters might reach out to coworkers or grandparents or other adult friends before they really tell them anything about what's going on. And this is kind of common in the girls. And so parents, I just want you to know, if you feel like you've been left out at times with your daughter, it's not uncommon. And I think that's around this issue of not wanting to disappoint, or not wanting a conflict, or maybe not even wanting to talk about it in depth, as a parent might do. Some females also tell me that when they wear a mask, it makes them very uncomfortable, and they get claustrophobic. And so instead of sharing that information with a parent, they tend to say no to going outside, or they tend to say no about wearing a mask in a public place. And again, in many places that's now required. And so instead of talking about why they don't want to wear a mask, they're sort of afraid to bring that out because they think that maybe that will cause conflict. Why do they get stuck so much or perseverate or tell you the same thing over and over and repeat the same phrase? It's because they have executive functioning deficits, and it really affects their coping. It really affects their inability to be flexible thinkers and to move on. And so they may hear something or overhear something, and that's stuck in their brain. And then you'll hear about it because they may, in fact, talk about it over and over again. The conversations and the worries that they've heard, you'll hear later on. And it's important to discuss how we can calm through this, how they can get rid of that perpetual sort of repetition of those thoughts in their brain, and maybe they can do some things like deep relaxation. But I think just telling them, you know, get out your calm down book or get out your yoga mat and go do your video. You really have to be there with them, because I have a feeling that they're going to still perpetuate and perseverate these thoughts as they go through some of their calm down routines. And if they're doing that, certainly the calming is not going to be working. So what are the experts saying? And I know we all have experts, don't we, that we're listening to, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx. We're listening to things that they're saying as our experts on Fragile X. Or, no, they're not experts on Fragile X. They're experts on the COVID virus. But we have our own experts. And so I consulted them, and I want to share some of what they've given me in terms of really good advice. And they would like you to take their advice and maybe share it with your daughters or your co-workers or people that are under your care as caregivers. So my first expert is Kristin. She works at a daycare center, and her job is considered essential. And so some of the things that I thought she would worry about, being an essential worker and having to go to work every day, and really the mask situation is sort of variable with the young kids that she's working with. They're not able to always wear masks. And so I asked her if that worried her, and it really doesn't worry her. She really is most worried about her coworkers that have been laid off, because some of them haven't had jobs, and she was able to keep hers 3/4 of the time. She also has noticed that the children at the center don't seem to rest as well. And she really wonders, even though they're young, that maybe because they're acting out a little bit more, they may have noticed changes, like the other coworkers are not there, or that there's changes at home, or there's things that they're not able to do that they used to do. She also has told me that she misses going to church and participating in small groups there. But she has been able to use Zoom church groups, which is kind of cool. And she said that's working for her. She misses getting together with her family and being, because she's married now and not living with her family of origin. She does exchange greetings, and they wave to each other and do FaceTime. And she's checking in with her grandparents and the extended family members. She says she doesn't watch a lot of news, and she's advising others to avoid the news as much as possible. And her big kernel of advice to all of us is to have faith and to know that this too shall pass. Another expert is Heidi. Heidi misses going to church and seeing friends there. She misses having a full schedule and routine. And Heidi's a very busy young woman. It's really neat to hear what she does during her day. She keeps busy. She has a lot of friends. She's in groups. And she has caregivers that do things with her, like hike and exercise and go to her appointments and have her nails done and get her hair done. So she can't do that right now. And so she said, I've had to develop some strategies, some things that I can do instead that keep me busy, because I'm so used to being on a schedule. And so she advises others to do things like home crafts. And she's taken on quite a bit of different crafting, puzzles, and baking. She also problem solves with me. She Skypes with me periodically, and that's her with me doing some work together and just problem solving, getting another perspective. And when she gets really tired of social isolation, she goes outside and tries to remember her blessings and spends time with her family. Allison tells us that she misses her friends and she misses socializing. She misses getting out for haircuts, manicures, and massages. And she also misses working. She loves her job. She loves the opportunity to be with others and to help others. And she can't do that right now. She says she sometimes cries. And I said, "Are you afraid that you're going to get the virus? Is that why you're crying?" And she said, "No, I just don't like the uncertainty. I don't know when things are going to change. I don't know how long we're going to be as we are right now and how long the isolation is going to last." She wants the virus to be contained, and then she'll feel better when there's a vaccine. So Allison is practicing social distancing, washing her hands, and not touching her face as much as she can not. But she said all of this is really hard to remember. And she said it really is kind of negative, kind of difficult, because it's always a reminder that the virus is there. And Jody was pretty quiet during the first 3 weeks of isolation, social isolation, when this first came out and we were all told to stay home. But after that, she began to FaceTime more and phone family members and friends and kind of developed her own coping to stay connected. Jody enjoys watching Unified Theater shows. She is disappointed that she can't see her friends, especially her caregiver, Dana, who she's very fond of. And that's a reminder of her routine and the structure that she had that she so much misses today. Jody loves art and has found comfort in drawing. She has a famous heart art, and those of you that know Jody know that she produces cards and all kinds of things that she sells for fundraisers, different fundraisers, including Fragile X. And so she's buried herself into that art and is making more and more cards. She loves seeing her grandparents. She delivers baked goods to them because they live nearby. She also finds comfort in watching DVDs of herself and her friends from past birthdays. And I thought that was kind of neat because it's a happy time. And so she enjoys sort of reliving those happy times and being with other people. She's definitely following the state guidelines to stop the spread of the virus. And she gives everyone that advice as well. So I guess the advice overall from all of the experts that I've consulted is that try to plan something to look forward to. I think that's what everybody is missing because we don't have a lot of plans. And we know that if we're looking forward to something, it sort of lifts our spirits and lightens our load. Plan FaceTime and Zoom calls whenever you can. And some of the girls have even set up a time where they kind of do their own time together, where they have a Zoom with different girls with Fragile X. Make a list of your favorite Netflix films, TV programs with friends or relatives, and then watch them and talk about them. And some people even FaceTime during an episode and talk about it and enjoy it together that way. Start a new hobby. It's a good time to do that, or a craft. And most importantly, understand that everyone is adjusting to a new normal. And having some sadness and worry is very normal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Braden, for providing this information for our families during this COVID time. We appreciate all you do and the time you take to help our families. Please stay well. Thanks again.